How do the Oklahoma Sooners stack up heading into their first year in the SEC in 2024? We're going to give you an early look at it on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef, and the show is at Locked On Sooners. And the Oklahoma Sooners will be playing football next as members of the SEC. And yeah, they've got some lingering questions, but one of the big questions that is being asked and thrown about is kind of where do they stack up amongst their new SEC brethren? And Josh, I'll just kind of pose that question to you. This was from Saturday Down South, was asking 10 questions about the SEC and really where does Oklahoma stack up? I think it's a really interesting question.
And if it puts into perspective what the storylines, I think nationally will be, at least to begin next year, the first item in Saturday Down South, which is a pretty prominent SEC website. Saturday Tradition, right, covers the Big Ten. Saturday Down South is totally SEC devoted, and it's SEC 365 for Saturday Down South. And their top 10 storylines entering next season, number one was how do Oklahoma and Texas fit in with their new SEC surroundings? And of course, other storylines are going to emerge as we go through this thing, right? Is Georgia still top dog, even though Alabama won the league this past season, right? Is there somebody else from the pack outside those two that can emerge and contend for the conference crown? There's plenty of storylines, right? But going in, the big storyline is just that. How does Oklahoma, how does Texas fit in? And John, I think for me, I expect Oklahoma to fit in well. Now, I do sit and say, okay, we have to see how year one, year two, year three plays out for Oklahoma because it's going to be different. It's going to be more challenging. That's just the reality of it for Oklahoma. I think it's a challenge that the Sooners can meet, and I think they've got the right coach in place, and they are accumulating the right type of talent to go take on this challenge. But we were looking at Brett McMurphy's way too early top 25 the other day, and there's 7 teams not named Oklahoma in the SEC that were in that way too early top 25 for Brett McMurphy. Oklahoma plays 6 of them. So the idea that Oklahoma's schedule is taking a step up, now Oklahoma probably got the short end of the draw in year one as compared to everybody else. I mean, they got a challenging draw, and it probably won't be maybe that difficult or daunting every single year. But if this is any indication, yes, it is a step up week to week. So it's a legitimate question, I think, for not just us to sit here, but for people nationally to sit here and say, okay, well, how is OU going to handle this thing?
Well, if you're going to put this into tiers, obviously you put Alabama and you put Georgia in that upper tier, number one tier. Nobody else can really touch them across the country for the most part. Yeah, Michigan's your national title holder, but over the last decade and a half, who have been the two most prominent teams in college football? It's been Alabama and Georgia. And Georgia will go into 2024 as the favorite for the national title once again. But then you go to that second tier, and I think Oklahoma is right there. They're right there with Ole Miss and with Texas and with LSU, and pick another SEC team. I think they're right in that mix, which means to me that Oklahoma, if things fall right, and they're able to solidify that offensive line, which is going to be the biggest question mark for the Sooners going into next year, and the defense takes maybe another step, why not? Why couldn't Oklahoma find themselves in the SEC title game? Obviously, it's going to be a tough task, but the expectation is conference titles. You don't win 50 conference titles, 7 national titles without having high expectations. And the expectations are going to be high. It doesn't matter that Oklahoma is going into their first year in the SEC. It doesn't matter that they're breaking in a first-year starter at quarterback. It doesn't matter that they're going to have questions along the offensive line. The expectation is Oklahoma is going to be contending and competing with the best of the best in the SEC. Hopefully it happens year one. And if things fall right, if they're able to pick up some big wins on the road, then they might be playing for a spot in the SEC title game in November. Obviously, they're going to have some tough games with Missouri and Alabama and LSU. But if things go right and they go well in those first few months, they're going to have a lot to play for in November. But as far as tiers go, I feel like they're right there in that second tier of teams that is going to have a shot to contend, but at least is going to be one of those teams that you have to watch out for every single year. We're seeing it on the recruiting trail. They're already one of the better recruiting teams in the nation under Brent Venables, and that's going to only continue to improve moving into the SEC, especially as they continue to have more success.
If I asked you to go back, and this maybe is we have to sit time and really dedicate, we have to take some time to really dedicate to the research portion of this. Oklahoma's 2024 schedule, at least just from a conference perspective, is its most difficult since. I mean, you'd have to go back, I think, a little ways into, obviously Red October during your last championship run was grueling, right? And Oklahoma emerged on the right into the equation from it. And I'd have to really think about what the other years that would have been comparable in the 2010s and beyond, what those were, because this is going to be a big time on paper step up from what Oklahoma's faced recently. And the one thing I love about that, if we're talking way too early questions, is now questions are about to be answered for Oklahoma. I think in the past you went into this thing, talking about this thing as the college football playoff, or even maybe at times the BCS, but less so that way because the Big 12 was great in the early 2000s. You kind of went in with some questions about how good or bad truly was Oklahoma. Now that's not really, I think, going to exist as much, John. I think we're going to have a really good feel when the regular season, when the SEC championship comes to a close and the college football playoff arrives. Okay, how serious of a contender is Oklahoma? And at times in the past, Oklahoma kind of got caught blindsided a little bit, thinking maybe they were better or more prepared than they actually were. Now the SEC, this entrance into it, I think it provides Oklahoma some clarity on that front. So if we're talking questions, well, guess what? Now, because of this schedule, questions get answered and vulnerabilities get exposed a lot more clearly.
Well, I think you can look at the 2024 signing class and you can see where the Oklahoma Sooners have placed their emphasis and what they believe they have to do to succeed when they get into the SEC. And that's in the trenches. It's signing 5 defensive linemen, 5 offensive linemen to fortify your fronts. You've got to be good. And we saw it in the national title game. I mean, yeah, Washington had the better quarterback, but Michigan had the better offensive line and defensive line, and we should have seen it coming. But it's panned out that way every single year, at least in the playoff era, that the team that generally has the best offensive line, defensive line is going to be the team that is going to win a lot of football. And so Oklahoma is really trying to emphasize building up their offensive line and defensive line ranks. And they did so in the 2024 class. They've got good players that came through in the 2023 cycle as well. Now they got to keep building and building and building. The only way you're going to get there is by stacking those offensive line, defensive line recruiting classes year after year after year. But it's a start in 2024. We'll see how many of those guys are going to be able to make an impact in year one. Speaking of stacking recruiting classes, the Oklahoma Sooners got a big recruiting weekend coming up with Junior Day on January 27th. Already a couple names confirmed to be heading to Norman for that. We'll talk about it here next on Locked On Sooners. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move that I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? Well, LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I've been in the hiring game. I've been a part of those interviews where you look at a resume, you look at a candidate sitting across from you, and you hope what they're selling you on their resume is what you're going to get. But you don't often know exactly what you're going to get until you get them in the job. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. LinkedIn helps try to cut through all of the minutia, all of the questions with a great job board, a great vast network of more than 1 billion professionals that makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So go to linkedinjobs.com, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And every recruiting segment here on the Locked On Network is brought to you by LinkedIn. Again, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Junior Day coming up. First, before we get to Junior Day, we got to talk about just the under the radar news that happened on Tuesday. Lee Davis, the on-campus recruiting director, announced that she is going to be stepping away from the University of Oklahoma as the on-campus recruiting director. We don't know the next step, but she was a very integral part of what Oklahoma did on these big recruiting weekends, whether it was Junior Day, the Champ U barbecue. I mean, so many important weekends. She was kind of the catalyst for, so to speak, the person that's kind of getting everything staged, getting everybody set up, probably doing a lot of the coordinating of getting recruits and prospects to campus. So it's interesting timing with Junior Day just a few weeks away, but it's going to be interesting to see how Oklahoma kind of transitions from here, because Lee, she did a great job in setting Oklahoma up, creating an atmosphere and an environment that was exciting for the kids to be in, exciting for the families to be at. You can see it on social media, the players, new players that have come in the last couple of years, parents all reacting and wishing her well and talking about what a great job she did in setting these events up and being the hostess for Oklahoma and helping coordinate all these things that made it easy for the coaching staff and the players to just get together, mingle, and do recruiting stuff, because everything else is ironed up. So before we get to the Junior Day, I just wanted to wish Lee a best of luck. Hope everything goes well for you. I'd love to hear the stories one day from all of her work behind the scenes. But Junior Day approaches. The Oklahoma Sooners already have 2 5-star prospects that are confirmed to be heading to Norman. The first is a South Texas 5-star safety linebacker hybrid, one Jonah Williams, a player that Oklahoma is very much in the mix for and could play some safety, some linebacker, probably maybe fits in a little bit at Cheetah for the Sooners. And then another one is Caleb Cunningham, 5-star wide receiver out of Mississippi, the number 2 wide receiver or 3, depending on where you look in the 2025 recruiting class. But 2 big names already confirmed for Junior Day, and even more will come down the pipe as we get close. And this is part of the 2025 class that's already the number 4 class in the 247 teams recruiting rankings. A great opportunity to build upon that with Junior Day approaching.
And I would imagine, right, you've got a number of players that are in-state kids in this class for Oklahoma, and some folks from around the area as well. Kamari Moore, that's not a difficult trip from Kansas City to come on down. Melissa, Texas, not a difficult trip to come on up, if you will, for Oklahoma. So, I mean, I would imagine that, a lot of these guys in this 25 class that are committed, and there's 9 of them when you think about Jaden Nickens, Elijah Thomas, Trinae Washington, Marcus James, Kevin Sperry, Grayson Harris, Kamari Moore, Owen Hollenbeck, and Alexander Shield Knight. I would imagine they're going to be there for Junior Day. So it's always good when a prospect can meet, well, another prospect, but somebody that's a committed prospect that's bought into the vision for Oklahoma. I'll be honest, though, when I read a couple of your guys' stories at Sooners Wire about these high-profile players that Oklahoma's targeting and has visits scheduled for this junior day, number one, the first thing that occurred to me, and this is just how my brain works, I guess, is it truly is a year-round game now. It's unbelievable. Like, you're talking about Lee Davis. There's no good time to exit that position, right? Because there's a junior day coming up, and I know that really the work for the most part is done in the 2024 signing class. But you've got still a February national signing day, and then it's, full speed ahead for spring football. Then the portal opens up again. So it's crazy. It truly is a nonstop cycle, but sounds like a couple of big time names already on the board for this junior day for Oklahoma, which no doubt it's going to be like other big time programs around the country, John. There's a lot going into this. And this is sort of, not the only opportunity to impress these 2025 kids that you haven't earned a pledge from. But this is going to be a big part of the push, right? To land eventual commitments and then signings for OU.
It is, because you have your quarterback for the 2025 signing class that's going to be there. You have your quarterback from the 2024 signing class that could be there, and Michael Hawkins and Brendan Zurbrugg. You have Jackson Arnold that could be there. All these guys, they move the needle. The quarterback moves the needle in a signing class. We already know the kind of recruiter that David Stone is. I'm not sure how much, the current players get into those, those weekends and then have an impact or whatnot. But I know that Kevin Sperry will be there and he'll be recruiting. I don't know that for a fact, but I just imagine it would be hard for him to miss this kind of a weekend, because he is a recruiter. He's somebody that's trying to build this class. He's putting in the effort. And so with a wide receiver like Caleb Cunningham coming to town, he's going to be there trying to continue to build that wide receiver core that it already looks really, really good in the 2024-5 signing class, but it can be even better. If you add a guy like Caleb Cunningham, who's 6'3" and already 185 pounds as a junior in high school, the dude's really, really good. And he's got really good, ball skills and someone who's going to be able to make a lot of plays after the catch. Kevin Sperry wants to add as many weapons to the Oklahoma arsenal as possible before the reins are his sometime down the line. But yeah, it's a big weekend, and all of these weekends, they're all opportunities to make an impact, to make a move, to impress, to, try and influence a decision. I think we're still in a weird time frame for the 2025 signing class. We've had so many commitments already that it seems like, okay, maybe we should be getting one anytime now from another prospect. But much like the last previous cycles have gone, it wouldn't surprise me to see, okay, maybe a little bit of a dead period on commitments over the next few months. And then as late spring and then summer hits, another flurry of commitments for the 2025 signing class, just because of the way that Brent Venables wants to see his prospects go about their visits. He doesn't want them out visiting a bunch of places and after making commitments. So that's kind of the way I envision it. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of juniors show up on January 27th, and then several guys come away like, yeah, we're sold, we're done, all in, and they commit, and then it's done. But it also wouldn't surprise me if you see a bit of a dead period in commitments too.
Just talking about a couple of the names that we know are going to be attendees that are not commits. Jonah Williams. One thing to note about him is, well, first of all, what jumps out is 6'3", 200. On3 has him listed as a linebacker, but Oklahoma, it sounds like, is thinking safety. But 6'3" safety that can run and move is pretty exciting. But the other interesting note about him, John, and it's important for Oklahoma because they've had a lot of success in these recruitments, he's a big-time baseball player too. So obviously OU's been able to make that push and that recruitment to a number of different guys over, the last, let's just say about the last decade now, with Kyler Murray and company, and recently Nesta and others, that this is a place where guys come to be a two-sport star. is at Oklahoma. So that is, and Taylor Tatum, of course, the other name in this last class for Oklahoma in that regard. So that part is, I think, an intriguing element and should be considered based on the track record of Oklahoma. I would imagine a positive sign for OU. And then where OU's at in this class with wide receivers, John, if you mix in Caleb Cunningham into that mix too, I mean, we might be building a statue for Emmett Jones before there's a reason for a statue to be built on the football field outside of just what he's doing on the trail.
Yeah, Emmett Jones continues to crush it. And I mean, the Deion Burks commitment through the transfer portal, just another in the long line of commitments that he's received over the last year since coming to Norman. Dude has been on fire on the trail. So you have a 5-star wide receiver out there that Emmett Jones is recruiting. I'm not going to put it past him to land the kid because he's just been that good on the trail. Another team that's been really, really good on the trail, Oklahoma men's basketball. They got some big time matchups coming up this week, 13-1 already. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Sooners.
Well, the NFL season, the regular season, it's a wrap, but there's still time with FanDuel Sportsbook. That's America's #1 sportsbook to get in on the action for the NFL playoffs. Oh, baby. One of the best times of the entire calendar year. It's here. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, such as their live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay in their Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find some of the popular parlays that are out there. And if maybe you're not feeling that, they also have their Find Bets in the new Explore tab for, again, new customers that maybe you're just finding your bearings. And again, new customers, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
And again, thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Stick around for the Locked On Sports Today show that streams live 24/7 here on YouTube as well. Josh, Oklahoma men's basketball 13-1. The Porter Moser era of OU basketball has finally begun. This is a team that has big wins already throughout the season over USC and Iowa. And really, their only loss came on the road against a really good North Carolina team, a top 10 team. They're 1-0 in Big 12 play. Got a big win over Iowa State on Saturday, an Iowa State team who just knocked off number 2 Houston on Tuesday night. The Sooners have 2 big road tests, one in Fort Worth against the TCU Horned Frogs, and then a top 10 matchup against the Kansas Jayhawks in Lawrence at Allen Fieldhouse. What a week. The Oklahoma men's basketball team is rolling right now.
Please excuse me while I do some on-air meditation. I will not get excited in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I will not get excited in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I will not get excited in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I can't do it. I can't fall into the trap. Not again. Not again. But hey, I will tell you, it is a massive week for Oklahoma. If they could win both, split these games, you go down to TCU would be another big time statement win. And obviously, if we're thinking about Oklahoma, and I think they're a player for this just based on how the early portion of the season has gone. If we're talking about OU in terms of the Big 12 championship race, then you really can't afford to lose both, right? And you got to defend home court, but you got to go pluck wins off the road too. And this is a TCU team that's, speaking of Fog Allen Fieldhouse, they almost did it 2 years in a row. And some would say that maybe the officiating played a part late. Others say if you're from Lawrence, Kansas, or Wichita, Kansas, or Topeka, or anywhere in well, I shouldn't say anywhere in the Sunflower State, but most of the Sunflower State feels like the officiating was right last week versus TCU. Bottom line is, this is a TCU team that gave the Jayhawks everything they wanted. It'll be a big-time test going on the road for OU's first road test. I feel like OU's up to the task for this. Let's see if Otega Owe and Javion McCollum and Milos Uzan, if they can take this show on the road and be the Oklahoma team that we've seen so far, which was able to get timely buckets late against an Iowa State team that, guess what, turns around and hands Houston its first loss of the season. So there's no doubt this is a markedly improved Oklahoma basketball team. And now it's time to go do what they've done positively so far and do it in a couple of true road environments.
I think the thing that's different about this team that I think is going to make them able to travel well is they're an aggressive team. They're athletic. They play good defense. They're one of the top 15 teams in KenPom defensive efficiency. So I think that's going to help them go on the road and play in some of these tough environments when, okay, maybe the shot may not fall as efficiently as it would at home, but your defense can hold up and it can help keep you in games in some of these tough games. So I think a split is very reasonable to expect. It would not surprise me at all if this is finally the year that they go into the Fog and they just come out with an upset victory. Again, I'm not going to predict it to happen, but it would not shock me one bit if this team just got hot and went in that environment and played well and snuck out of there with a win. It wouldn't surprise me.
It's worth pointing out, you should have a bone to pick because Kansas ended its long drought versus Oklahoma in football. So an eye for an eye.
That's right. It's time. It's Oklahoma basketball's time to get one on Kansas. But yeah, that TCU team is tough. They've been tough the last several years. They've been a athletic, a physical team, somebody that's not going to give you anything, and Oklahoma's going to have to go and they're going to have to take. Now, if they shoot as efficiently as they shot against Iowa State, in particular 40% from three, then I really like their chances to win, especially in Fort Worth, because that's been one of the issues that we've seen from this OU men's basketball team is their inability to hit the three over Porter Moser's era. They've gotten a lot of 3-point attempts, but they just haven't been consistently hitting them. Well, against Iowa State, 40%, that's going to play. You shoot 47% from the field. You do really well. You hit free throws down the stretch. That's going to help you win a lot of basketball games. But again, it's a lot of it comes back to the defense, and they're getting a lot of contributions from a lot of guys. And I think that helps as well. You can spread the wealth. You don't have to rely on one guy to go fill up the bucket. A guy like, Latrey Darthard, he can go and get you some buckets. Javion McCollum, obviously he's a double-digit scorer almost every single game this year. Milos Uzan is just so sweet off the dribble and can make such great passes. And then Otega Owe, dude, he's so athletic and he can just explode for points. And that doesn't even consider John Hughley, Sam Godwin, who have been big-time role players in the paint for you as well. If you can get those guys going and get some cheap buckets, get some offensive boards that allow you to have some second chance opportunities, then again, I think Oklahoma's got a great recipe for success, but you got to go win one of these two games. You got to go win on Wednesday night in Fort Worth against TCU and really set the stage for what could be a big time environment on Saturday.
Yeah, it's fun. It's going to be such a war though, night in and night out in this conference
every week.
It's crazy how good the league is. And for Oklahoma to be fun again is very exciting. I'm happy for Porter Moser, who has worked so hard to build this thing and really was ravaged by the transfer portal the first couple of go-arounds, and this time because they were able to have some roster retention with a couple of key pieces and Milos Uzan and Otega Owe. That was pivotal, right? And Godwin, right? To keep those core pieces, and then it seems like hit on a number of folks out of the transfer portal has finally wound up with a team that I think Porter Moser can have play in his image a little bit. And they have bought in so clearly on the defensive end. They're connected. They just take every possession seriously. And part of it's just the talent is probably a little bit better. It's more athletic for Oklahoma, but they just don't seem lackadaisical like they've been the first couple of seasons under Porter Moser. Every possession, every rotation, defensively, offensively, feels like it counts. They got 8 guys that are averaging 18+ minutes per game. So it's a legitimate 8 deep roster in rotation that they're operating with right now. The other night, Soares hits a big 3, and I think he finished with just 5 points in the game, but he had one of the big threes late that helped Oklahoma win. So they're getting a number of contributions, and they just couple of years, first 2 years with Porter Moser, it wasn't happening. Now it is. And now we see if they can take it on the road.
That's right. And they got a group of guys, I think, that can get to the basket too when the shots aren't falling. They don't have to sit there and rely on shooting 23 pointers in a game. They can get to the hole and get some easy buckets as well. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh, I'm John. Boomer Sooner.